Good morning, everyone. For my sins, I work for the Considerate Consructors scheme, and I've done so for quite a long time. Let me ask a silly question. Do you know why it's called, because it's a mouthful, isn't it? Do you know why it's called Considerate Constructors scheme as opposed to Considerate Contractors scheme? Anybody thought about it? Because the idea of it is to embrace everybody involved with the scheme. The designers, the local authority, the client, everybody who funds it, and the contractor as well. You'll see as we go through lots of areas where the client has actually a very big effect. You haven't been to the A1 Leeming Bar, and I think
Yeah, that's right.
the degree student, have you?
Have you been there to the
site?
It
It is. Have you been? Have you noticed there are no Considerate Constructor schemes signs along the entire length of that motorway, 17 miles or something? Well, I think it's 17 k's actually. Because Highways England won't allow another sign there. So the client does in turn have some responsibility for the scores. The problem that I had, I understand where Highways England is coming from, because you can get sign blind after a time, you get just too many signs. But lo and behold, last time I was there, it had a big sign up that says, "Prepare your car for winter." And it's March. If there isn't a silly sign, that has to be the silliest. And I don't know why they wouldn't allow the Considerate Constructor scheme signs to be up, to publicise what we're trying to do in terms of the industry. I suppose the next question is, what are we doing in terms of the industry? Well, we're trying to educate people to improve the image of construction in order to attract people into it. And I'll go into why in a few moments. The one thing I would like to do before I go anywhere is to say, if you have any questions at all, please just put your hand up and ask the question. What I get out of this is questions and answers. I actually quite enjoy answering questions. I'm not saying there won't be any that I can't answer, but there's more likely to be most that I can answer than ones I can't.
Can I just ask you, do any of your companies, are you part of this scheme? Or any of your sites? Or,
How many of you are working, by the way? No,
all
of them?
Yes, they're all
Wonderful.
part-time.
Brilliant. Did we do that, or did you do that? I don't know. But our object is to try and encourage people into the construction industry. So if you have any questions, please just shout. I'd rather you left knowing something, albeit minor, than not knowing anything at all. Right, how big is the construction industry? Do we know? I saw a report in the paper the other day that said Brexit is going to mean that 3 million contractors are going to leave the country. Well, I think if 3 million contractors left the country, I don't think there'd be anything left, because there's only about 3 million of us in the entire scheme. But there is 3 million people employed in the construction industry, and 280,000 businesses. That is huge. You know, if somebody said there's going to be no more building tomorrow, 3 million people would be out of work. It'd be dreadful. It is huge, and I don't know whether you appreciated how big it was. Is the industry positive or negative in its image? Does it matter? Oh, everybody's really joining in here. Does it matter? I think the answer is yes, it does, doesn't it? It has to matter. What is the scheme and why do we need it? Now, this is definitely before your time. It's even before my time. But this is how construction used to be. Can you all see these pictures, by the way? Can you see them? Good. It looks primitive, doesn't it? Anybody know what it is? Empire State Building, thank you. 1934, all of this is Empire State Building. Jesus. And you've probably seen some of these because they're sort of, well, that
seems set up, don't they? Some of them.
That was almost my first job on a site. Not quite as high up as that, but my job was to check all these bolts and make sure they were tight. On January the 1st, 1964, a guy at one end said, come over here. He meant me to walk across that beam. Okay, it wasn't, I don't know how many feet off, it was 70 feet off the ground. Walk across this frosting crusty beam. I did what the guy on the right's doing. I went across on my backside on the beam. I thought discretion was the better part of valour. But in 1964, it hadn't changed much from 1934. 30 years with virtually no improvement in either its image or its safety consciousness or anything else. It was a macho industry to be in. It was purely and simply a man's world. And you've seen that, I'm sure. I know these are faked, but it hadn't changed in 30 years. Right, this is how some of it is today. These are the improvements we've had. This was taken at Trafalgar Square, preparing Trafalgar Square for the 2012 Olympics. And there's a guy from a contractor who shall be nameless telling everybody to get lost. Unbelievable. And is that how we want to portray our industry? He's sitting there because he's happier in there than he is in the welfare facilities that are being provided. In other words, he's not happy at all in the welfare facilities provided. That's why he's in the van eating his food. So is it positive or negative? And does it matter? Now, follows a 7 or an 8 minute film, which I think probably says more about the scheme than anything else, and anything else anybody else can say. The website is very sterile. It gives you a load of facts. This probably puts a lot more heart into it, and that's what I'm hoping that I'll be able to extend. Let's just watch the film for a couple of minutes.
The ability to build things has always been important. Early on, it was driven by the need to survive, to have protection against the enemies, and also to make simple places to live, to keep the precious animals in and the weather out. But then our needs grew. We demanded churches, public buildings, workplaces, shops, roads, bridges. The skills involved became more and more complicated. Trained people and special equipment were needed to do the work. And that was when construction became an industry. And today, that industry is fantastically important. Just look around, we're utterly surrounded by construction. It's a wonderful living advertisement for the skills of all those people involved. With such an important place in our lives, and so much professionalism in the industry, why is it that builders have such a rotten reputation? Here are a few clues. This delivery vehicle is on the pavement. This safety fence offers no protection at all. This hole beside a pavement is virtually unprotected, and the nearby ramp almost useless. Ear defenders help the workers, but won't stop the public suffering from noise pollution. And here's another preventable hazard: clouds of uncomfortable dust. The state of this road surface will make life difficult for mountains with pushchairs and the elderly. This pavement has been made an assault course for pushchairs and wheelchairs. And here's an example of difficult site access with no signs to show where the office is. And how confusing is this sign? These stacked materials block the path completely. And this site office doesn't present the public with a good image of the constructor or his industry. And what about this mess? If you're in the construction industry, it's easy to find good reasons for these problems. Just one careless worker in a large workforce. Illness or holidays affecting schedules, unexpected delays, or just being so focused on the job that you don't stop to think how you're disturbing anyone else. But if members of the public are affected by building works, then they just see the contractor as a bad neighbour, someone who doesn't care what they think. Now, I'm not suggesting for a moment that all building sites make bad neighbours. there are plenty of sites run by thoughtful people who really care about the people around them and show real concern for the environment. But unfortunately, there are also plenty of sites run by people who don't. That's why some very experienced industry professionals founded the Considerate Consructors scheme. Its aim is to improve the image of the construction industry. But how can any organisation do that without the power to make and enforce laws? Well, first the scheme produced a set of guidelines, simple, sensible and non-technical, for all those working on the construction process, that's architects, contractors and clients. And their main focus was on consideration for the public, for the environment and for those working in the industry. After that, they had to rely on persuasion and on facing the inevitable questions, why should we? What's in it for us?
The Considerate Constructors scheme actually sets the standard that Suffolk County Council want our main contractors to achieve.
For our company, it's a major aspect of how we do projects. The industry as a whole, I think it's growing, and it's evidenced by the number of companies that are signing up.
It really does encourage teamwork. You know, this scheme helps you work towards these objectives, and everyone's on the same side. The clients, contractors. It's something that's really positive.
We tend to have feedback sessions when we've had visits by the monitors. We publish all our results internally. I think the general view is that the monitors are incredibly fair-minded. I think they're incredibly positive. Our view is the monitors tend to look for the good things in a project and look to encourage people to improve all the time.
From the client side, I see that the Considerate Constructor scheme is important because it sets a relationship between our contractors and the residents and that are all around our sites. They're the ones that are most affected by our buildings going on. I could certainly recommend it to other companies. Part of me says no, I shouldn't recommend it because I don't want the competition.
Clearly the principles of considerate construction do make sense to the industry, and an ever-increasing number of sites are signing up. The figures are startling. But what actually is involved in joining the scheme? For a start, everyone registering a construction project with a scheme of any size, any type, is given a set of guidelines, all of them based on common sense and aimed at preventing the sort of problems we've already seen. Once registered, the contractors are allowed to display these posters so the public know what they're committed to. To check the scheme's guidelines are being followed, there's a team of more than 100 experienced monitors, all of them very knowledgeable professionals from inside the industry. They visit every site registered with the scheme and report on what they find. The monitors aren't just examiners who will only pass or fail a site. They also act as mentors, discussing problems and suggesting sensible improvements that will help raise the site's performance beyond the statutory requirements. For the really good sites, awards are given for the best of best practice. And of course that means plenty of opportunities for good publicity and improving the image of both the construction involved and industry.
The Most Considerate Site 2009.
I believe if you follow this scheme, you will improve your site, you'll improve your image, and I believe the whole industry will come out of it looking far more professional.
Working within the Considerate Constructors Code benefits companies of every type and size. Raising levels of awareness about the public and the environment pays huge dividends, improving the image of both the companies involved and the industry, while reducing complaints because there is more dialogue and positive interaction. That's why more and more of these banners and posters are being seen around the country, from Land's End to Aberdeen, Cardiff to Belfast. This scheme benefits everyone involved. Behind the scenes, the workers get much better conditions. The clients are going to be pleased because any contractor working within the scheme is liable to cause fewer problems during a job and leave fewer headaches afterwards. And best of all, the public. They get a much better deal. Less inconvenience, more care and more courtesy.
The Considerate Consructors scheme actually sets the standard.
I think it's fantastic, it's been helpful, and helps encourage pride and raise the image of the industry.
It's a worthwhile scheme, it's a useful scheme.
I think Considerate Constructors promotes exactly what we ought to be doing.
Considerate Constructors scheme adds value. The scheme commercially, I believe, creates efficiencies.
Yes, it is a good scheme to be part of.
I think the scheme actively encourages us all to do better every day.
Any questions on that? Deafening silence again. Did it make sense? I think... Sorry, carry on.
Do you approach companies to be part of the scheme, or does some companies come to you to sign up?
It's a mixture of both, actually. When the thing first started, I was tasked with marketing it. And the first thing I did was try to get architects and quantity surveyors, and the clients, in fact, to put it in their specification that all sites will be registered. Lo and behold, the government took it up, and now if you're spending public money, 90% of the time you have to register your site with the scheme. That's why when we get to it, you'll see the takeoff of the number of sites registered. It took a long time to start, but once it had started, it really took off quite dramatically. And we'll see that graphically in a moment.
What happens if the site fails?
Well, our handling of failure is actually not very good. All we can actually do is ask them to return the banners and posters. We have no statutory powers at all. Sadly, on one of the sites that was one of ours, there was a death recently, last week, something like that. And the monitor had actually reported that the safety was woeful. But they can't do anything else. I suppose what she could have done is picked up the phone and said the HSE. But do we do that, or I don't know the answer to that. I don't think we have come up with the answer to that yet. But sadly, somebody died. Fortunately, she had warned them that this was going to happen. But there's very little else we can do, unfortunately. I think taking away the posters and the banners for somebody who doesn't care is not much of a punishment to me. Right. We looked at why, which introduces when. Let's think of the most impressive civil engineering project. I use civil engineering and you'll see why project over the last perhaps 50 years. Any thoughts on what it might be? Channel Tunnel? Probably. I think it's the Channel Tunnel, and that was certainly the catalyst for this thing starting. What happened at the end of the Channel Tunnel was all of the contractors that had an input, and that was most of them. Most of the major contractors in this country had an input, whether it was building hotels, infrastructure, the tunnel itself, railway lines, electrification, the whole thing. Most of the contractors had an input in some way. And they had this debrief and came to the conclusion the fact that they met within that much under the English Channel was luck and not good workmanship. And they came to the conclusion as well that they probably couldn't build the Channel Tunnel again because the calibre of engineers coming out of university at that time was so poor that they just couldn't do it. So they tasked Justice Latham to look at this, and he started looking at it in 1994, and he came to the conclusion that all of the bright students didn't want to do engineering. They wanted to do law, they wanted to do dentistry, they wanted to do medicine, they wanted to do anything but civil engineering. Why? Because the image that was portrayed was woeful. You know, we had 25 years ago, we had lousy facilities on site. I mean lousy. I've known people work out of the boot of their car. How can that be a welfare facility? It's just a place you put a drawing. But it was woeful. And that's why they tasked Justice Latham with looking at what is wrong and how can we attract better calibre of people into the industry. And lo and behold, he looked a bit further than that and found out that most people, joiners, bricklayers, the rest, also went into the industry because they couldn't get a job anywhere else. Now that's not what we intend. What we intend is to encourage bright people like you into the industry as early as we can to make sure its image maintains. The industry is unable to recruit good people. That was one of the things that came out of the debrief. Why? Poor image. The industry is increasingly reliant on a less skilled workforce. Why? Image was rubbish. He had a series of questions: why, when, what, and how. The why and the when we've done. What? This was his overview. In 1994, the Construction Industry Council had a thing called Constructing the Team. It was described as fragmented, ineffective, and incapable of delivering. Now, that was particularly sophisticated projects, but ultimately all projects. And we need to address things like client satisfaction, safety, productivity, profitability. Now, the HSE was already formed at this stage. And let's face it, the HSE has had a big input into why things are improving on sites. But the concept of the scheme, improving the image of the industry, was formed at that time. And what is its prime aim? To minimise disturbance. Now, who follows Star Trek? Anybody follow Star Trek? You've all heard of Star Trek. No, you must know it backwards, don't you? It would be wonderful to have a beam me down site, wouldn't it? You know, everybody goes to bed one night, and somebody comes along and says, beam me down this site, and suddenly it's there. There's no disruption, no problems, no dust, no noise, it's just there. Wouldn't it be wonderful? They wouldn't need us, but wouldn't it be wonderful? But we're trying to minimise the disturbance or negative impact. We're trying to eradicate offensive behaviour and language, and reward contractors' commitment for excellence. Okay. The scheme itself was set up in 1997 by the construction industry. It's owned, by the way, by the construction industry. All we do is manage bits of it, but it's owned by the construction industry. Any work defined as construction can be registered. Sites and companies, we now have a company registration scheme as well as a site registration scheme, are monitored against a 5-point code of practice, which you know about. And the code focuses on 3 key areas: workforce, environment, and the general public. And the general public is highlighted there because that's where all the complaints come from. Most of us can handle the environmental things. Most of us can handle the workforce things. But can we handle the people that are going to pass the site every day? The people whose house is next door to a basement excavation in London. Now, I know these houses are quite posh in London. Now, I don't have too much sympathy with somebody who can afford a £20 million house. Because they can just go to Barbados for 6 months while the basement's being built. That really isn't a problem. But some of these basements do cause a lot of nuisance. And other sites cause a lot of nuisance too. You saw some of the bad practice on the film itself. Right, scheme history. 1997, I'm just going to highlight the areas that really, I think, matter. It was launched in 1997, so it's 20 years old this year. BREEAM began including the scheme in its assessments. The government recommends that the scheme to all of its departments. Associate membership is introduced, and we'll get to associate membership and client partnership. And that's the balance of them. I think the real aim is the first 3 or 4, which I think are very important. Now, you remember I said graphically how it took off. I think I saw site 130 something in 1998. So I was about there. I saw site 130 something. And we started marketing it through that period there, and then look what happened. At the moment, they're registering a steady 800 to 900 sites a month. So it's probably reached its peak now. It's probably reached as many as we can handle, and there's probably as many as the industry needs it to handle. What it doesn't do is handle the little sites. It doesn't handle cowboy builders, which is the unfortunate thing. It does handle 60-odd% of the total turnover in the industry, but only something like 25% of the sites. Right, how does it work? How do we work? And what of the future? We have a thing called the 3 E's, and it is to educate, to encourage, and to enlighten. The object of the exercise is to talk to people like you and plant a seed. And we want to see that seed germinate and develop over time. The Considerate Constructor Scheme commits registered sites and companies to look at appearance, look at environment, and look at people's safety together with its workforce. Where? All construction sites, companies and suppliers operating within the UK. And why? Because it has a huge impact on our lives. The object of the exercise is to minimise that. I think we've covered most of that. I'm mindful of the time. Who, when, and how? Who can register? Pretty well anybody associated with construction can register. When? Preferably before they start work. And how? Online or through the monitor or through the normal contact details. Just pick up a telephone and somebody will handle it. And I must tell you that the scheme office is fantastic. Somebody has got their ducks in a row. You will get somebody on the phone within 5 or 10 seconds, and that person will handle it properly and sensibly and professionally, and you will be sorted out if you've got a query or a problem. Right. These are facts which I think are interesting, at least. The total value of all the sites registered to date is 450-odd billion. That's a lot of sites. We've seen 190,000. 1,000 site visits are carried out a month. There's the 60% of the turnover of the industry registered. 100,000 sites registered, it's 101,000 now. And 700 different companies have registered. So it occupies a large chunk of the industry. And make no mistake, you will come across it in your time. If you haven't already, you certainly will. Oh, sorry. Politicians, they do try to get everywhere, and lo and behold, he's got in here. But all he's doing is saying he appreciates the industry and he appreciates what we're trying to do. Right, I said earlier, the general public, that is easily the biggest area. And if you notice on the checklist, the community side of it is heavily biased towards being nice to people, talking to people, encouraging people, visiting schools, colleges, universities, and generally putting yourselves around so that people will see you and see how professional you are. The workforce, some people get it and some people don't. You have got it, and if that sample that I got of Pimm's Park is anything to go by, you understand completely how it works, and we'll talk about that later too. And the environment, excuse me. We need to try and do as much as we can to minimise the effect on the environment and to maximise the recycling rates and the management of our carbon footprint, etc. We have three types of registration: site registration, company registration, supplier registration, and we now have a thing called an ultra site, where everybody who supplies that site, who works on the site and the site itself, all aspire to make the scheme work. What does a monitor look for? People like me, they go onto a site and they have this checklist which you've seen, and they have this code of considerate practice. What do we look for? We look, first of all, for an attitude of mind. You can walk on a site and you can say something to the site manager, and instantly you know whether he's going to be good, bad, or indifferent. If he's confrontational, well, we tried that, it didn't work, suddenly you know you've got a problem. If he says, we tried this, it didn't work, but we're trying this now, That's a different attitude completely. So what we look for generally is attitude. And then we check people off against any applicable prompts in the checklist. And again, you've seen that. The monitors generally are all professionals who are 50 years old or more. They all have had many years in the construction industry, in various forms of the construction industry, whether it be building or whether it be civil engineering. 130 monitors, that's probably about right still. What the monitor will do is to check the site's compliance with the code of practice. The encouragement is here, giving advice and ideas, and recognise and reward sites for good practice. We have a good practice hub. Does anybody heard about that? Does anybody know about the best practice hub? Because you can log on to that anytime you like, and anybody can log on to it just by going through the ccscheme.org.uk. And then it's / I think it's just best practice hub, one word. But the best practice hub actually lists contractors who have done things that are outstanding. A simple thing, about 12 months ago, Wilmot Dixon were working in Darlington, and people were registering a lot of punctures in the nearby pay and display car park. Turned out all the subcontractors, every night they brushed their van out, and what happened, all the nails and the screws that fell out of packets or whatever, got onto the car park. The site manager found a way of making an electromagnet, had one made, and he magnetically swept the car park every day, after hours, or before people started coming in. Every single day, that car park was magnetically swept. Now, I put that forward as an innovation about 12 months ago. Went on to the best practice hub. I pitched up at a site 2 weeks ago, and that's one of the things that they do every day. He magnetically sweeps the car park, just in case. And I thought, yeah, okay, it's worked. That has done something. Funny enough, I haven't had a puncture since I made that suggestion, so I've done rather well out of it myself. The scoring process. I've never seen a site with scores 1, but it's not very good, quite clearly. Compliance is 5 out of 10. Something is wrong, 4 out of 10. 2 things are wrong. Now, these are the bold items. You've noticed the checklist, have you? You will have seen it, that's for sure. But the first 4 items in every section are bold items. They are mandatory. The guy's actually had to do something about those. If he hasn't done 1, it's a 4. If he hasn't done 2, it's a 3. If he hasn't done 3 of them, it becomes 2. I've never seen a 1. But once he's achieved all 4 of those, he's got 5. Thereafter, depending on how many of the prompts he addresses, and they are the little items on the right-hand side, depending on how many of those he's got, that will build his score accordingly. So that is how the scoring is, and that is up to 9. The one at the bottom there is innovative, and that's the only way you score 10 is by having an innovation. Next one says exactly what. What does it take to score 10? Something has got to be innovative, and that can be a variety of things. Problem with the innovation is that most of us monitors have been around a long time, and between us we have seen an awful lot of very good things. Some of them adopted universally, some of them not adopted at all. But we don't get many innovations, I'll be honest. Normally it's about 50 a month suggested, and normally about 25 or maybe slightly less are accepted.
Do you give them awards or anything?
Not for an innovation, no. They get a mention on the best practice hub.
Yeah. Like in general, civil engineering doesn't invest in research or like they might have some patents on some things, like mechanical engineering, chemical engineering, electrical. They do a lot more than civil engineering or construction.
Indeed. But there are a lot of mechanically engineered things used on sites. that contribute to innovation. I came across one the other day where they're working on a rail track, and I think it's Crossrail, where they have a shield, which is 5 metres from the railway line. And the moment the bucket for the excavator goes anywhere near that shield, the engine cuts out. Now, I think it's a very good idea, personally. I think it's a hell of a good idea. But we used to have limiter switches on cranes and excavators long before Crossrail came along. Does that make it innovative? It's just a different form. It takes it to a different level. But the idea certainly isn't innovative. But it's still a very good idea, and it works. But you're right, civil engineering doesn't invest much in research. Any other questions? Not asleep yet? Okay, it'll come. Why is the scheme important? Okay, we've said, and I make no apology for this, we aim to improve the image of construction and make us, all of us, look more professional in everything we do. Some sites are out of this world, and some sites are absolute disasters. Right, associate membership and client membership, you saw that briefly on the history. Members, for both, they have twice yearly meetings. They have a dedicated section within the scheme's website. They have monthly benchmarking information in relation to their sites. They have the use of either of these logos on their letterheads and the opportunity to have an input into scheme activities. Generally, the associate members are the ones that form the scheme aims and objectives. They're the ones that make it happen. And there are some of the associate members, there are 50 odd, there's certainly not 50 odd there, and there are some of the clients. Not one of those is a Mickey Mouse organisation. And it's fair to say that the scheme is not a Mickey Mouse thing either. Very seriously, and we take our jobs very seriously. Now, money. Sooner or later, somebody's going to ask, how much does it cost? Well, I'll leave you to work out where the decimal point goes. £10 million site, £744. 0.01%, I think it is. That's for nothing. That is very, very cheap. For what is given, that's very cheap.
Would you consider fines?
Sorry?
Would you consider fines?
Sorry, who am I speaking to? Oh,
If it's-
sorry,
yeah,
Darren. I'm looking at the...
If a site or a company failed, just like, obviously, it would hold more weight if there's a...
There's no, unfortunately,
Or a blacklist.
there is nothing in law that says that we can fine people.
Can you shame people?
Sorry?
Can you shame them?
Well, maybe. Naming and shaming has been suggested. I think we probably need a permanent lawyer on tap to make sure that we don't libel somebody.
When you go to site, do you just turn up randomly or do you tell them not to? Because obviously everyone has 5 days, so like, you get rushed.
When we go to sites, we produce a report which is good, bad, and indifferent. But generally, the report is just accepted by the contractor. Sometimes the contractor comes back and pushes back and says, hey, we do this, and you said we didn't. Okay, well, if they do something we've said, then we're wrong. If the site fails, it will generate a letter automatically going to the MD of the company, telling them why it's failed. That normally has an effect in that the MD talks to the construction director, who talks to the contracts manager, who talks to the site manager, so the kicks go downhill, generally fairly rapidly. Once upon a time, we had a situation where it was included in the planning application. So a site actually had to register the site with the scheme in order to get planning permission to build a house, for instance. Unfortunately, they forgot to put in that we have to comply, that they don't. So all that happens is somebody building a house pays his £252, and he can carry on and do what he wants. But the object of the exercise when it was originally suggested that he pays his £252 and he has to have a site that complies. A lot of them just register and don't care. I have seen a photograph quite recently of the welfare facilities, one site in London. It had a microwave and it had an extension lead running from the house next door with 240 volts in it. And lo and behold, it was mounted on a piece of wood in a puddle. Now tell me what's safe about that. I actually think that somebody rang the HSE and told them about it, because that is just a death trap. It's sincerely something waiting to happen. But no, we can't. That's how it works. All we can do is to advise that the thing does not comply.
If you can't give fines, wouldn't you make them pay a sum of money? You give them back.
But we have no law to do that. We're back to Darren again. Can we fine them? The answer
no,
is...
you take the money off them at the start.
Oh, you mean as a deposit?
Yeah.
I hadn't thought about that. That's actually not a bad idea. We might discourage people from registering, of course. But to be fair, most sites try their best to comply.
Yeah.
And I don't know where the level is that would make that particular suggestion. I'm not aware of any statistics that would make that worthwhile. But yeah, it's a thought.
The question was, do you announce that you're coming?
Oh, sorry, I apologise. No, we don't. But, you know, we need the guys on site to actually answer the question. I need, for instance, tomorrow I'm going to Middlesbrough Town Hall.
And do they know that you're going?
They know I'm going.
So you don't just turn up randomly on site?
I have to, because he's got to put an hour and a half to 2 hours away of his own time.
Yeah.
And hopefully it'll be
How often do you go?
trouble-free, interruption-free, and we'll get 2 solid hours talking about the scheme and about improvements he can perhaps make. Or, and because I know the site manager, I'm more likely to go away with more information than he would.
How often do you go visit an assessor site?
It's sites registered in excess of 25 weeks get 2 visits. Sites visited over 78 weeks registered in phases. That make sense? Sorry if I didn't hear first time. I thought we were still on the fines business. Okay, some example of good practice. In appearance, that thing there is in Bristol, and it's part of the College of Art and Design, and some graffiti artists were invited to come and decorate the hoarding. And that's what they came up with. And I thought that was a brilliant way, A, of stopping your hoarding being filled with graffiti, and B, doesn't it look attractive? You couldn't fall out with anybody with that. But all of those are good examples of how to improve the appearance. Community, we have a mascot, I have a good site. If I were you, just never volunteer to go in I have a good site. A, is a health hazard. B, he's 7'6" tall. C, his boots are this big, and my feet are only that big. So going upstairs, you have to go up backwards, because that's the only way. That's where the health hazard is. And it's incredibly claustrophobic inside. I was in it for 2 hours and lost 2 kilograms. Terrible. But anyway, that's beside the point. Environmentally, all good practice. From a safety point of view.
Did you have confined space training for that?
Sorry?
Confined space training for getting into either.
I hadn't thought about that either. To be honest, the ideal person is 5'10", of medium build. I'm sort of medium build, but I'm slightly more than 5'10", and I made a mistake. I should have really got somebody else to do it. But I arranged the suit, so they said I must go in it.
Do you ever get involved at the design stage before any works go out on site?
Sorry, just run that past me again.
Do you ever get involved at the design stage before works go on site to eliminate all the problems? Well, not all the problems, but a lot.
The consultants always know at design stage whether their sites are going to be registered. They always know, because most of them have been doing it for the bigger contractors all the time, albeit on design and build basis.
What would you send some of your mentors into a design office to advise on their design.
I hadn't thought about that, but it's a hell of a good idea. No, I seriously hadn't thought about that, but it's a good idea. I will make a suggestion about that.
It's two good ideas, quite innovative.
That's 10 then, is it? No, that is a very good suggestion. Any more good suggestions? From a workforce point of view, let me just go back to we said you did. This thing here is becoming more and more useful. We try to encourage the workforce to report things that they think are either good or bad. Particularly report things that are bad, because they may result in accidents. And you said are these on this side, and the contractor on this side is telling you and telling everybody else what they have done about it. It's starting to become more and more regular on site, shall we say. From a workforce point of view, all of those are exemplary. Can you do it on a small site? Well, that's where the judgment comes in. What is relevant, what is applicable, and what isn't? There are some things in that checklist which are inappropriate for sites of £100,000. So we don't do it. We don't expect the site to do them. Bad practice, well, we've all seen those. We've seen them everywhere. Good practice and bad practice. Right, the awards. The film itself said that the awards, 2009 I think it was, we now have it split into very big sites, medium-sized sites and small sites, so that there is a most considerate site in each of those categories, which I think is a definite improvement. There is also a most considerate site in suppliers and in companies, and they have separate award ceremonies throughout the country. Sorry?
How do you split them up into size?
0 to £1 million is relative, they're small sites. £1 million, I think, to 10 are your average site, and 10 million upwards are large sites.
It's not in terms of the actual size of the site itself.
Sorry?
It's not in terms of the actual size of the site itself. You could have a very small site.
Oh, you're talking about the area now of the site. No, it's totally based on value. The bigger the site, the more it can afford doing fancy things. That's really the answer. How can you compare Berkeley Homes tower block in London worth 150 million with Northern Gas putting in a new little pipeline in Trimdon Avenue in Acklam? It can't be compared, really. Having said that, you'll probably find that Northern Gas are going to produce almost a higher score as the Berkeley Homes site. Selection is based on considerate performance, which is at the monitor's discretion more than anything else. Right, this is last year's most considerate sites. Under £500,000. There we go. These are the size sites. Walter Thompson was one that I saw, and it was absolutely wonderful. Seriously, it was a seriously good site. These are the people that won company and supplier awards. Right. The Considerate Consructors scheme is a marketing tool, and it can be used very, very successfully. I will tell you a little story. I used to do the marketing for a company called McNicholas Construction down in London. And we had to do we were pricing some subsoil drainage in Regent's Park. And knowing the way we employed our people and knowing our performances in the past, I thought it would be a good idea to register the site with the scheme, which I knew about because I worked for them as well at the same time. And I put a little note at the bottom of the tender letter: we're going to register our site with the Considerate Constructors scheme. We weren't the lowest by quite a long way, and I can't remember how much, but it was a couple of £100,000. We weren't the lowest. And I got a phone call from our reception who said, there's somebody on the line who wants to speak to you about the Considerate Constructor scheme. So I talked to him about it, and he said, can you come and talk to me? So the chief estimator and I got in the taxi and we went off to Regent's Park, which is officially one of the royal parks, so you're not allowed to plant weeds or do anything wrong. You've got to be very seriously looked at. And we came away with a job. We're £200,000 or £300,000 difference in price. We were actually, in the taxi, we were trying to work out how much we could knock off our price. But in the end, we didn't need to. All we had to do was talk through the scheme. So it is a very valuable marketing tool, or certainly was in those days, when not everybody knew about it. Use it in your offer to the client. Be prepared to discuss it. And finally, good luck. And is the image of the industry improving? Yeah, of course it is. Is there more to do? Of course there is. Will it ever stop? Nope.